Chris, how did you read
Eric.
Trump's inaugural speech, given that he didn't mince his words?
Yeah, it was a typical Trump speech. People thought that he might be conciliatory in his words, but it was definitely in the theme of what he was saying on the campaign stump. He took aim at his predecessor's immigration policy while Joe Biden was just sitting feet away from him. And he also previewed some of the executive orders that he plans to sign later today, specifically regarding immigration and closing the southern border. So yeah, it was a very typical Trump speech, but he did say some things that were interesting. That he had a mandate to give people back their faith, their wealth, and democracy, and that his assassination attempt, he felt that he was saved by God to make America great again. And then he also closed by saying, "In America, impossible is what we do best." After talking about his political comeback after he lost the election in 2020.
Chris, focus now changes to foreign affairs because he's, mentioned several policies that he wants to undertake during his second term as president. How do you see the relationship between India and the United States going forward with this Trump 2.0?
Well, it's very apparent that he and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi have a very close relationship, and they see each other as cut from the same cloth. They appeal to many of the same elements in their elections, nationalism in their countries. But we can expect to see, even though Trump is taking a hardline policy toward immigration at the southern border, a lot of immigration experts say that the U.S. will pursue a policy of allowing highly skilled tech workers into the U.S., more of them, specifically those H-1B visa holders, of which Indian workers have the majority of those H-1B visas every year. So we're expecting that they will continue to have their warm relationship. And also, when it comes to these planned tariffs against China, India might be key in replacing, some of those supply chain issues the U.S. has faced, as they try to move away and diversify supply chains away from China.
Chris, you are in Washington, D.C., and there are so many events that are currently happening in Washington, D.C. On your screens right now is the president going or heading to Capital One Arena. Tell us more about Capital One Arena. What is happening there?
Yeah, it's going to be another victory rally, kind of like the one he had last night, but this one is for his supporters. But Capital One Arena only sits 20,000 people, so people were waiting in long lines, and they faced a very heavy security perimeter that was several city blocks. So they were waiting for hours to get inside, and most of them were turned away because there were more than 200,000 tickets issued for the inauguration. When it was planned to be outside, and people would have stood on the National Mall to catch a glimpse of Trump's inauguration, the ceremony that happened at noon, but that was put inside because of this very harshly cold weather. So a lot of the people that I ran into just on the streets, wearing their Trump hats and who were very staunch Trump supporters, they were just looking for places inside to watch the proceedings today because most of them will not be able to get into Capital One Arena.
Chris Casquero is a VOA correspondent. Chris, stay with us. Susan Tehran is our correspondent. She is in New York. Susan, this is quite a significant day for United States and for very many people because it happens every 4 years. And for some people, it's the first time they're witnessing such an event. But this one is different.
It is different. And Eric, since this morning, we've been talking about this cold weather in New York, and it's even colder in D.C. But this did not stop supporters of Donald Trump to take the road and go to D.C. from all over the United States. It is noteworthy for a lot of people that this is perhaps their first inauguration. It's going to be a memorable memorable one nonetheless. But it's also significant because it's the first time in many, many years since 1892 that there's a president with two non-consecutive years. And for many Americans that voted for Donald Trump, and Trump has alluded to this as well, it's significant because they believe that actually Donald Trump's position now is stronger if, as opposed to if he had served two consecutive terms, and that this 4-year gap sort of made him more popular among the American public, as opposed to, if he would have just continued that tenure. Remember, it was a very dark time. It was during COVID, and that was the time when a lot of Americans felt uncertain. It was when President Biden came into office. Right now, things are very different. I think American people are familiar with Donald Trump. They're familiar with the kind of person he is. And he, in turn, is familiar with the office of the presidency. He's admitted himself that he just was not comfortable. Well, not the word comfortable, but he was just not experienced enough to maneuver around Washington, D.C. with politicians. He was a New York real estate person at the end of the day. But I think it'll be very interesting to see how much of that first year experience he's going to bring into his second term. But nonetheless, there is excitement. There is also concern. Those that don't agree with his policies, those that don't agree with conservative policies here in the United States, they're concerned about what a second Trump presidency will bring. And so, it's really this patchwork of different ideologies. America has always been that. And we're going to see that, of course, in this second term as well.
Susan Tehrani is in New York. Susan, I know you're braving the cold. Stay with us. I'll come back to you later. This is live at the Capital One Arena, and we do understand that President Trump has arrived at the arena. He's about to address his supporters at the arena. Let's just listen in to what is happening at the arena, and then we'll continue with our conversation. Okay, I did expect something to come out of Capital One Arena. Let's just wait for a moment, and then we'll go back to the Capital One Arena. We do understand the president is at the arena. He's about to address his supporters. Chris Casqueo is a VOA correspondent. He's in Washington, D.C. A lot of activities are happening in Washington, D.C. as we speak. You were telling us about the Capital One Arena. What happens after the Capital One Arena? Is that the end of the events for today?
No, there's the inaugural ball that's taking place in 3 different spots, but I have to tell you, Eric, that they are running about an hour and a half behind schedule, and those balls were scheduled to start at around 7 o'clock. So we'll have to see how long this rally takes at Capital One Arena and whether they stay on schedule, because tomorrow they have a service at a church at 9 a.m. So it could be a late night if these events continue to go over their schedule.
All right. Chris Casqueo is a VOA correspondent. Chris, thank you. Susan Tehrani, you're still in New York. How significant are these balls? We mentioned that there are 3 balls that are about to happen.
Yeah, the inaugural balls, they are very popular. People really, everyone wants an invitation to these balls. Of course, not everyone gets them. I will say that event at the Capitol Arena is also very significant. Remember, this year we don't have that big parade in Washington, D.C. So for Trump supporters, this Capitol One Arena event is very significant. And they're it's somewhere that's enclosed, so I'm sure they appreciate that. The balls are very significant. They're important. It's also a time for, politicians and guests and everyone to mingle. It is a networking event at the end of the day, but those are the balls where you see the president and the first lady have their first dance, or in this case, their second dance, as the president and first lady. So it's interesting to watch. It's somewhat like what the Oscars used to be. There's a lot of glitz and glamour, and also a lot of noteworthy people. I mean, we're going to be looking sort of at the who's who is going to be attending which ball, and that's going to be interesting for a lot of people as well. At least those that support the president and who weren't able to go all the way to DC on the one hand, or get an invitation to the ball on the other. So it's great for everyone to be able to watch at least segments of that on TV live.
Susan, some of the things that happened today are now going viral. One of them is an image of President Trump not touching the Bible while he was taking oath. Did you notice that?
Yeah, Eric, how could we not? It's all over the internet. So while I didn't notice it when we were watching it live, but yes, I've seen that as well, and everyone has different theories about that. I'll be interested to see what the Trump camp says about that issue, because as you know, one of them was Abraham Lincoln's Bible. The other one was a personal Bible that belonged to President Trump's mother. And the First Lady was sort of holding those in her hand. It'll be interesting to see why that happened. We know J.D. Vance, of course, he put his hand on the Bible when he was being sworn in by Brett Kavanaugh.
All right, Susan, stay with me. We'll go back to Capital One Arena. It's all entertainment first for the participants at the arena as they wait for the president to address them. And we do understand that the president has already arrived at the arena. He will be around or addressing the participants at this Capital One Arena. And you've heard from our correspondent that this is indeed a significant event. And after this, there will be 3 different inaugural balls. And it will be interesting to see who will attend those balls, because it happens every inauguration year. That is every 4 years. So again, this is significant for so many people. Some people have never seen an inauguration ceremony in the United States before. Now they have a chance to see it in full glare. But this time it's different because of weather constraints. But that has passed. So many events have taken place. Donald Trump has signed documents. He's about to sign more documents and executive orders in a short while from now. We'll know the details of the executive orders. And we do understand that they number 100. So we'll see if he'll be able to sign those 100 documents. Let's listen in to the Capital One Arena.